Alicia moved through the base invisible on purpose, working as an assistant while running a classified internal mission under the command of Captain Mark Donovan, the only one who knew who she truly was and how dangerous she could be. Mark trusted her instincts and her silence, but even he didn't immediately see the quiet cruelty growing in front of him. Ensign Nathan Cole did. Nathan saw a woman he believed was weak, disposable, beneath him, and he made sure she felt it every day, cutting her down with smirks, comments, and public humiliation. Then came the morning in the cafeteria, when laughter echoed as Nathan threw scalding coffee into Alicia's hair and mocked her for daring to stand in his way. Alicia didn't scream. She didn't retaliate. She stood there, breathing through the pain, holding her posture. And that was when Mark walked in and saw everything. What followed wasn't anger, it was calculation. Because from that moment on, Alicia was no longer observing from the shadows, and Nathan had no idea he had just triggered a lesson designed to dismantle him piece by piece. There's a deeper truth behind that silence, and a reckoning no one in that room expected. Before the story goes any further, make sure you're subscribed, because what comes next reveals how all of this truly started.
The mess hall at Coronado Naval Amphibious Base carried a constant, low-frequency roar, steel chairs scraping concrete, trays clattering, boots striking the floor in uneven cadence. The air smelled of burnt coffee, disinfectant, and sweat that had soaked into uniforms over years of repetition. Conversations overlapped in clipped bursts, punctuated by laughter that was sharp rather than joyful. This was a room full of men trained to manage violence, even at rest. Nathan Cole occupied the center of one of the long tables as if gravity bent subtly toward him. 25 years old, newly badged, his trident still looked untouched by time or consequence. It sat on his chest perfectly aligned, the gold catching the fluorescent light each time he shifted. His posture was loose, but deliberate, arms spread wide, legs extended, boots planted like territorial markers. When he laughed, his mouth opened first, his eyes lagging behind, a fraction too late. Confidence sat on him like an over-tailored uniform. He spoke loudly, recounting something from Bud S. with embellished precision. His hands moved as if shaping the memory in the air, each gesture broad, invasive. Around him, other operators listened with varying degrees of patience. A few smirked. One shook his head almost imperceptibly. No one interrupted him. Rank was still new to him, but volume often substituted for it. Alicia Solomon entered the mess hall through the side door reserved for staff. She adjusted her grip on the file stack against her chest, shifting the weight to keep the corners aligned. The folders were marked with routing slips and red classification stamps, edges softened from handling. Her steps were measured, efficient, her shoulders slightly rounded inward, not submissive, but economical. She wore a plain gray polo tucked into slacks, the uniform of someone meant to blend into the background. She did not scan the room. She did not hesitate. Her gaze stayed level, fixed on the exit across the hall where the command offices waited. As she moved, she unconsciously tracked distance and angles, maintaining a path that avoided unnecessary contact. Years of habit lived in the micro-adjustments of her stride. Nathan noticed her the moment she crossed into his peripheral vision. His eyes narrowed, a small contraction at the corners, irritation flaring without conscious thought. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. He followed her with his gaze, chin lifting slightly as if appraising an obstacle rather than a person. The laughter at his table dipped as he paused mid-story. As Alicia passed behind him, Nathan extended his leg. The motion was smooth, practiced, timed precisely to intersect her step. Her foot caught. The files shifted. For a fraction of a second, her balance wavered. She planted her free hand on the edge of the table, fingers splaying against the scarred surface, absorbing the impact through her shoulder. The folders pressed harder against her ribs. A controlled exhale left her nose as she corrected her stance. A few pages slid loose, edges dampened by condensation from nearby drinks. Nathan leaned back in his chair, already lifting his cup. "Watch it, admin," he said, his voice carrying. "You're crowding the talent." Alicia straightened. She adjusted the files, squared the stack with a practiced tap against her forearm. Her expression remained composed, lips pressed into a neutral line. When she spoke, her voice was steady, professional. "Excuse me, Ensign Cole. I'm delivering these to the commanding officer." The use of his name landed. Nathan's eyes flickered, irritation sharpening. He stood, chair legs scraping loudly as they dragged backward. He loomed over her, close enough that the heat from his body radiated into her space. The conversations around them thinned, sound receding as attention shifted. "You don't talk unless you're spoken to," he said. His grip tightened around the styrofoam cup, fingers compressing the thin wall. "You people forget where you stand." Alicia did not step back. Her breathing slowed, shallow, and controlled. A muscle jumped once along her jaw, then settled. She lifted her eyes not to his face, but past his shoulder. Nathan followed her gaze a beat too late. With a short, dismissive flick of his wrist, he hurled the contents of the cup forward. The coffee struck her cheek and collarbone, splashing across her neck and soaking into the fabric of her polo. Steam rose briefly. The liquid ran down her skin, darkening the cloth, seeping into the files she held. A sharp intake of breath escaped her before she could stop it. Her fingers curled reflexively, tightening around the folders until the cardboard bent slightly under the pressure. Nathan laughed. It was abrupt, barking, devoid of humor. "That's what happens when you get in the way," he said. "Consider it a lesson." The mess hall fell silent. Alicia lifted her hand slowly, wiping coffee from her eyelashes with the back of her fingers. Her hand trembled, not wildly, but enough to betray the force being held in check. She swallowed once. The skin along her neck had already flushed red. She did not look at Nathan. Her eyes stayed fixed on the space behind him. Nathan's laughter tapered off. The absence of sound pressed in around him, heavy and unnatural. He became aware of the room again, the stillness, the way no one moved, no trays clattered, no voices rose. A sensation crept up his spine, cold and unwelcome. A shadow fell across his shoulder. The air shifted, dense with authority. Behind him, boots stopped. A presence settled into the space like a locked door. Nathan's smile collapsed as he turned. Captain Mark Donovan stood directly behind Nathan Cole, close enough that the rookie could feel the shift in air pressure before he understood its cause. Donovan was tall, broad through the shoulders, his posture effortless and immovable. His uniform was immaculate without appearing ceremonial creases sharp, boots dull from use rather than polish. He did not rush. He did not raise his voice. He simply occupied the space as if it had always belonged to him. His eyes moved with deliberate economy. First, the back of Nathan's head. Then, the coffee dripping from Alicia Sullivan's chin, darkening the front of her polo, soaking into the files she still held against her body. His gaze paused there a fraction longer than necessary. The skin at Alicia's neck was already flushing, the heat from the liquid blooming beneath the surface. "Ensign Cole." Donovan's voice was low, nearly conversational, but it cut through the silence with surgical precision. No amplification, no strain, the kind of tone developed over years of issuing orders that did not need to be repeated. Nathan turned too fast. His heel caught slightly on the concrete, a small involuntary stumble he corrected immediately. The color drained from his face, leaving his skin pale and tight. His mouth opened before his brain caught up. "Captain, sir, His eyes darted once, briefly, toward Alicia. She tripped. It was an accident. Donovan did not respond. He stepped forward instead, closing the distance until Nathan was forced to take a step back to maintain balance. Another step followed. The table edge pressed against the back of Nathan's legs. His shoulders drew in subtly as his chest expanded too quickly with a shallow breath. Donovan shifted his attention to Alicia. There was a nod, barely perceptible. A controlled acknowledgement passed between them, invisible to anyone not trained to see it. Donovan noted the redness spreading along her collarbone, the way her fingers tightened around the dampened folders, the restraint in her posture. He absorbed the details without comment. "An accident," Donovan said at last, repeating the word with no inflection. "You deliberately extended your leg. You threw a hot liquid at close range. You just assaulted a member of my staff in a room full of witnesses." His eyes returned to Nathan. "Is that how we operate, Cole?" Nathan swallowed. A bead of sweat traced a slow line from his hairline to his temple. "She's just an assistant, sir," he said quickly, words stacking over each other. "She disrespected the trident." For the first time, something shifted in Donovan's face. His jaw tightened. A vein stood out along his temple, pulsing once, then again. The change was subtle but unmistakable. He turned his head toward the room. "Clear out," he said. "Everyone. Now." The effect was immediate. Chairs scraped back hard enough to squeal against the floor. Boots moved in unison. No one argued. No one lingered. The operators filed out with eyes forward, expressions neutral, the discipline of withdrawal executed without hesitation. In under half a minute, the mess hall emptied, the echo of footsteps fading down the corridor. Only 3 remained. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed louder now. Coffee dripped steadily from the edge of the table onto the floor, each drop audible. Donovan turned to Alicia, his posture softened by a degree not familiarity, but precision. "You okay, Sullivan?" Alicia exhaled slowly. Her shoulders dropped a fraction as the tension she'd been holding released in controlled increments. She reached for a napkin from the table, dabbing carefully at her neck, then her jawline. Her hand moved with the efficiency of someone assessing minor injury rather than reacting to insult. "I'll live," she said. Her voice was even, unembellished. "But the files are ruined." "Forget the files," Donovan replied without hesitation. He turned back to Nathan. "You think because she carries paper she's beneath you?" Donovan asked. His voice remained calm, but the space around the words felt compressed. "You think the trident gives you permission to humiliate people?" Nathan shifted his weight, boots squeaking faintly. His hands flexed at his sides, fingers curling and uncurling as sweat gathered under his arms. "I'm just saying, sir," he said, attempting to reframe. "We need to maintain standards." Donovan smiled. It was not warm. It did not reach his eyes. The corners of his mouth lifted with the precision of a blade being drawn. "You're absolutely right, Ensign," he said. "Standards matter." He took a step closer. Nathan held his ground this time, though his breathing betrayed him short, rapid pulls through his nose. "And since you have so much excess energy," Donovan continued, "I think your training schedule is too light." Aricia looked up from the napkin. Her eyes met Donovan's. There it was, the shape of the decision, already locked in place. She didn't react outwardly, but something in her gaze sharpened. She understood the vector before it was spoken. Nathan nodded quickly, relief flashing across his face. He mistook consequence for opportunity. "Yes, sir," he said. "I'm ready." Donovan held his gaze for a moment longer, then stepped back, already disengaging. The silence returned, dense and controlled. The correction had begun. 2 hours later, Nathan Cole stood at rigid attention in Captain Donovan's office. Heels aligned, hands locked along the seams of his dress uniform trousers. The room was quiet in a way the mess hall never was controlled, insulated, built for decisions rather than noise. The faint hum of the HVAC system pressed against the walls. A framed unit photograph hung slightly off-center behind Donovan's desk, its edges worn from years of relocation. Nathan fixed his eyes on a neutral point on the far wall. He did not blink often. Sweat gathered at the base of his neck, soaking slowly into the stiff collar of his uniform. The fabric clung to his shoulder blades. His jaw was clenched just enough to make the muscle jump when he swallowed. He had already run through the likely outcomes in his head: a formal reprimand, maybe a negative counseling statement, possibly a temporary loss of privileges. None of that scared him. Administrative pain was tolerable. Being washed out was not. Behind the desk, Donovan sat with his back straight, boots planted firmly on the floor. A manila folder lay open in front of him, its contents neatly aligned. He turned a page with deliberate care, eyes scanning lines of text without urgency. The pause stretched, long enough for Nathan's breathing to become something he had to consciously regulate. Alicia Sullivan stood near the corner of the room, partially in shadow. She wore fresh clothes now, free of coffee stains, the fabric clean and pressed. Her posture was relaxed but precise, weight balanced evenly, arms resting at her sides. She did not look at Nathan. Her gaze remained forward, unfocused, as if the wall held something worth studying. Donovan closed the folder and rested his hand on it, fingers spread flat. Cole. Nathan's spine stiffened another degree. "Sir, I've been reviewing your file," Donovan said. His tone was neutral, almost clinical. "Top of your class in physical fitness. Excellent times across endurance metrics, high marks in aggression." Nathan felt a subtle easing in his chest. His shoulders pulled back instinctively. The words landed like validation. "You claim you're ready for the field," Donovan continued. "Yes, sir," Nathan replied immediately. The hesitation was gone now. Born ready. The corner of Donovan's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. He leaned back slightly in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. "Good," he said, "because a situation has developed." Nathan's eyes sharpened. He kept his gaze forward, but his pulse accelerated, beating visibly at his throat. "We have a high-value asset transfer scheduled for tonight at the Kill House," Donovan went on. "It's a controlled evolution. Simulation only. But we're integrating outside contractors as opposing force to stress-test perimeter security and internal response." Nathan's lips parted just slightly. This was not corrective training. This was trust. "I need a team leader for the interior detail," Donovan said. The words hit with physical force. Nathan's eyes brightened, the tension in his face rearranging itself into something close to anticipation. This was it. Not punishment evaluation. A proving ground. "I'm your man, sir," he said. The confidence returned to his voice, smoother now, tempered by what he believed was earned authority. Donovan studied him for a moment, expression unreadable. He nodded once. "The mission parameters are simple," he said. "You will protect the VIP at all costs. The OP4 will be running simunition, non-lethal marking rounds, close-range engagement authorized. They will be aggressive. They will exploit mistakes." Nathan listened intently, absorbing every word. His fingers curled once, then relaxed. "If the VIP gets hit, you fail," Donovan continued. "If you fail, you're out of the teams." He paused, letting the weight of it settle. "Do you understand?" Nathan's throat tightened. He forced the words out cleanly. "Crystal clear, sir." "Good," Donovan said. "Report to the armory at 1900. Draw your gear. Be ready to brief your detail." "Yes, sir." Nathan snapped a sharp salute, the motion crisp, textbook perfect. He pivoted on his heel and marched toward the door, boots striking the floor with renewed confidence. As he passed Alicia, a faint smirk touched the corner of his mouth. Small, fleeting, but unmistakable. She did not acknowledge him. Nathan didn't notice what had changed. Alicia was no longer holding a notepad. In her hands was a Glock 19 slide, the metal catching the overhead light. She rotated it slightly, fingers moving with practiced precision as she inspected the recoil spring assembly. Her thumb tested the tension, eyes narrowing just enough to register minute resistance. Satisfied, she reassembled the components with smooth efficiency, the parts seating with a soft, familiar click. Donovan watched her from behind the desk. Their eyes met briefly. No words passed between them. Nathan exited the office, already picturing himself in the kill house, already certain he was about to prove exactly who he thought he was. The structure known as the kill house squatted at the edge of the training compound like a sealed container for controlled violence. From the outside, it was unremarkable, rectangular, utilitarian, wrapped in corrugated metal. Inside, it was a maze. Plywood walls formed narrow hallways and tight rooms, their surfaces scarred by thousands of previous impacts. The rubberized floors absorbed sound and shock, giving each step a dull, muted quality. The air carried the layered scent of burned propellant oil, an old sweat that never fully left the building no matter how often it was aired out. Nathan Cole stood just inside the main room, shoulders squared beneath the weight of his plate carrier. He adjusted the straps with short, efficient pulls, cinching the cummerbund until it sat tight against his ribs. His gloved hands moved to his weapon. He brought the M4 carbine in close, checking the chamber, then tugged the magazine free and reseated it with a firm slap. Blue-tipped simunition rounds sat stacked inside, marking ammunition designed to teach hard lessons at close range. He rolled his shoulders once, loosening the tension in his neck, then settled the rifle back into a low-ready position. 2 other rookies stood with him, both assigned to his detail by Donovan. Their helmets sat a fraction too low, chin straps pulled tight. One of them kept flexing his fingers, the synthetic knuckles of his gloves creaking softly. The other swallowed repeatedly, Adam's apple bobbing under the edge of his throat guard. Neither spoke. Nathan leaned toward them, lowering his voice. "We hold the main room," he said. His tone was confident, clipped. "Nothing gets past us." The words steadied him. He felt the familiar surge of anticipation heat in his chest, a tightening focus that narrowed the world to angles and distances. This was what he had trained for. The box. A place where speed and aggression decided outcomes. The heavy steel door at the entrance groaned as it swung open. The sound echoed off the plywood, metallic and final. Captain Donovan stepped inside first, his presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. He wore protective gear, but it did nothing to diminish the authority in his posture. Behind him came the VIP. Nathan blinked. It was Alicia Sullivan. She wore a full protective vest, oversized on her frame, and a helmet with a clear visor pulled down over her face. The civilian clothes beneath the armor were the same plain slacks and shirt he'd seen earlier, now partially obscured by straps and padding. The gear swallowed her, making her look smaller than she was. Her silhouette lost inside equipment designed for operators built heavier. Nathan's brows drew together. His lips pressed into a thin line before he spoke. "This is the package?" he asked, the disappointment slipping through despite himself. Donovan stopped and turned his head sharply. "The asset is the asset, Cole," he said. His voice carried the edge of command, cutting short any further comment. "Ms. Sullivan possesses critical encryption keys. Your job is to get her from point A to point B while the building is assaulted." He gestured once, precise. "She is a non-combatant. She follows your instructions. Do not let her get painted." Nathan nodded, though his jaw tightened. Behind the clear lens of his safety glasses, his eyes rolled once, slow and deliberate. "Great," he muttered, "babysitting duty." He turned toward Alicia, closing the distance until he stood directly in front of her. The rifle hung across his chest, muzzle angled down. He pointed a finger toward the floor behind him. "All right, listen up," he said. "Stay behind me. Don't make a sound. If things get loud, curl up in a ball and pray. Got it?" Alicia looked at him through the visor. Her expression did not change. Her breathing remained steady, visible only as a faint fogging of the plastic with each controlled exhale. "I'll try to keep up, Ensign," she said. The words were neutral. The tone gave nothing away. Donovan glanced at his watch. "Exercise goes live in 2 minutes." He turned and exited the room, boots thudding softly against the rubber floor as he moved toward the stairwell. He climbed to the catwalk that overlooked the structure, the elevated observation deck where instructors watched every movement from above. He keyed his radio, thumb resting lightly on the transmit button. "Team 2, are you set?" There was a brief burst of static. Then a voice came through, calm and unmistakably confident. "Team 2 set," it said, "ready to humble this kid." Donovan released the button. From above, he looked down at the three rookies and the armored figure standing among them. His expression was unreadable. Inside the kill house, Nathan shifted his stance, tightening his grip on the rifle. The countdown had begun. The lights inside the kill house died without warning. The sudden absence of white illumination compressed the space, collapsing depth and distance into darkness. A half-second later, emergency red strobes snapped on, pulsing at irregular intervals. Shadows fractured across the plywood walls, stretching and snapping back with each flash, turning corners into moving threats. The air seemed heavier, thickened by anticipation and recycled breath. "Form up," Nathan hissed. His voice was sharp but thin, swallowed by the echo of the room. He reached out and seized Alicia by the shoulder strap of her vest, fingers digging into the nylon webbing. The motion was abrupt, impatient. He shoved her backward behind a stack of old tires positioned against the wall improvised cover, stacked waist high. "Stay there." Alicia absorbed the push without resistance, her boots planted cleanly on the rubber floor. She did not stumble. She did not argue. Her hands stayed visible, palms open as she settled behind the tires, posture compact and controlled. Her visor reflected the red pulses, masking her eyes. Nathan turned away immediately. He brought his rifle up, shouldering it hard, muzzle tracking toward the southern doorway. His breathing quickened, shallow and fast, fogging the inside of his eye protection. His jaw clenched, teeth grinding once as adrenaline surged. In his mind, the picture was clean. He was the shield, the decisive force between threat and asset. The others would follow his lead. The woman behind him was cargo, an object to be moved, not managed. The first breach came without warning. A flashbang detonated at the south entrance. The bang was physical. A concussive pressure slapped his chest as white light exploded across his vision, bleaching the red strobes into nothingness. His ears rang, a high-pitched whine cutting through his thoughts. Nathan flinched hard, shoulders hunching as his eyes squeezed shut on reflex. He staggered one step sideways, boots slipping on the rubber floor. He hadn't expected live pyrotechnics. "Contact front!" one of the rookies shouted. The words barely registered before movement flooded the doorway. Three figures in black surged into the room, fast and deliberate. Their silhouettes cut clean lines through the strobing red light. They moved as a single organism, each man covering the other, muzzles tracking independently. One peeled left, another right, the third driving straight in, clearing angles with practiced efficiency. They flowed around obstacles instead of through them, boots silent, timing precise. This was not standard opposing force. Nathan raised his weapon too high, too fast. His sight picture wobbled. He squeezed the trigger anyway. Pop, pop, pop. The simunition rounds slapped uselessly into the doorframe, blue paint splattering against plywood. His shots were uncontrolled, reactionary. The rifle bucked slightly against his shoulder, but there was no correction, no adjustment. The return fire came instantly. Two sharp impacts struck the chest of the rookie to Nathan's left. Blue paint bloomed across the man's vest. He stiffened, then dropped backward onto the floor, arms spread, helmet striking rubber with a dull thud. He raised one hand, signaling his kill, breathing hard through his mouthguard. "Man down!" Nathan yelled. The sound tore out of him, edged with something brittle. Panic climbed into his throat, tightening his voice. His field of vision narrowed. He stopped tracking the room as a whole and fixated on the doorway, on the threat directly in front of him. His sectors of fire collapsed into a single tunnel. He stepped back without looking. His heel caught the edge of a loose mat. His balance broke. He windmilled once, rifle jerking sideways, then went down hard, landing on his backside. The impact knocked the breath from his lungs. He sucked air in sharply, chest burning, hands scrambling to keep hold of his weapon. The strobe flashed again. The remaining rookie was already disengaging, dropping into a seated position after taking a simulated round to the helmet. The fight was collapsing faster than Nathan could process. He twisted, pushing himself backward on one hand, boots skidding. His eyes darted toward the tire stack. "Alicia, we're moving!" he shouted, voice cracking. "Go, go!" He lunged toward the tires, reaching out blindly for the vest strap, intent on dragging her with him, resetting somewhere anywhere else. His fingers closed on empty air. There was nothing there. The space behind the tires was clear. No helmet, no vest. No civilian figure curled where he'd left her. Nathan froze. His hand hovered uselessly in the air, fingers flexing once as if he'd missed by inches. His breathing stalled, caught halfway in. The red light pulsed again, illuminating only bare rubber floor and scuffed plywood. A cold realization began to creep in, slow and unwelcome. The asset was gone. Nathan pivoted on his heel, boots scraping against concrete dust, expecting to see the rear security element where it had been seconds earlier. The space was empty. The spare tires stacked along the wall were untouched, inert. No movement. No silhouette. His jaw tightened as he leaned out a fraction more than doctrine allowed. "Where the hell is she?" he muttered, the words barely clearing his lips. The answer didn't come. Instead, pressure did. The opposing force advanced with discipline, muzzles up, sectors divided. They weren't rushing. They were cutting the angle, one slice at a time, methodical, patient. Slice the pie. Nathan recognized it instantly. Textbook room domination. Each step narrowed his world. Each step erased an option. A sharp crack echoed. His remaining teammates staggered as a simunition round slammed into the helmet, the impact snapping the head to the side. The man dropped to a seated position, one hand braced on the floor, weapon slipping from his grip. He didn't try to get back up. The body language was final, out of the fight. Nathan's throat worked as he swallowed. His breathing shortened, pulling air high into his chest. He shifted behind the wooden barrier, splinters biting into his forearm as he pressed too hard against it. The barrier felt thinner now, suddenly insufficient. His knuckles whitened around his rifle, finger indexed, but trembling despite his effort to steady it. The VIP was gone. The team was down. 3 hostiles remained, closing in with deliberate spacing, overlapping fields of fire. Nathan's eyes darted, tracking muzzles, angles, shadows. The noise in his ears wasn't gunfire, it was his own pulse, loud and irregular. Sweat ran down his temple, stinging his eye. He blinked hard, once, twice, fighting the urge to wipe it away. This didn't resemble the drills at Coronado. There was no sun, no surf, no instructor's whistle cutting through the air. There was no reset button. The walls felt closer. The room felt wrong. He hunched lower, shoulders rounding inward, breath coming faster despite his attempt to slow it. His chest hitched, then stalled, as if his body forgot the rhythm. Movement. A shadow detached itself from the darkness on the left flank behind the advancing element. Not fast, not rushed, controlled. Alicia stepped into the light. She didn't announce herself. She didn't hesitate. Her posture was forward, balanced, weight on the balls of her feet. She carried no rifle. In her hands was a sidearm, taken cleanly from the rookie already ruled out. Her grip was high and tight, thumbs locked, wrists aligned. The muzzle tracked smoothly, not searching, selecting. Nathan stared, momentarily unable to process the shift. The assistant who had been ordered to stay back, who had been treated as a liability, moved like she belonged there. like she had always belonged there. Her elbows settled. Her shoulders stayed relaxed. There was no wasted motion. Pop. The first shot landed center mass. The opposing operator jolted, a sharp intake of breath visible even through the protective mask. Pop. The second round struck the next man before the first had fully registered. Vest, impact. A stagger backward. Pop. The third shot came almost immediately, precise, economical, less than 2 seconds total. 3 controlled pairs weren't necessary, 1 round each. Enough. The room went still. The 3 enemy operators lowered their weapons in unison, acknowledging the hits. Training reflex, ingrained and automatic. Alicia didn't look at them again. Her eyes moved, scanning corners, checking dead space. She performed a tactile reload without looking down, the magazine seating with a solid, practiced click. Only then did she turn. Her gaze settled on Nathan. He was crouched low behind the barrier, shoulders tight, rifle still clutched close to his chest. His mouth was slightly open, breath shallow, eyes wide, not with fear now, but with something closer to disbelief. Alicia's expression didn't change. No smirk, no satisfaction. Just a steady, unreadable calm as she assessed him the same way she had the room. She said nothing. Her silence carried more weight than words. The silence inside the kill house pressed in from every surface, thicker than it had been moments before the first shot broke it. The red emergency lights washed the room in a dull, crimson, flattening depth, turning hard edges into shadows. Dust hung in the air, barely visible, suspended like it had forgotten how to fall. Alicia stood where she had finished the engagement, pistol indexed downrange, shoulders square. The red glow traced the lines of her face without softening them. Her breathing was slow, controlled, the rise and fall of her chest barely perceptible. Nathan straightened in increments, vertebra by vertebra, as if his body needed permission to stand. His knees felt loose beneath him. The rifle in his hands dipped before he caught himself and brought it back to a low ready. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. You. His tongue pressed against his teeth, searching for words that refused to line up. How did you left your flank exposed. Alicia's voice cut through the space cleanly. It wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. The softness she carried in the office-measured deferential was gone. What replaced it was flat, precise, and unmistakably command. You panicked, she continued, each word placed with intent. You lost positive control of the asset, and you let your team die. Nathan's lower eyelid twitched once, a rapid, involuntary tick. His grip tightened on the rifle until the tendons in his forearms stood out. He shook his head, small at first, then harder, like he could dislodge what he'd just heard. This is a mistake, he said, breath pushing out too fast. Your admin. Alicia shifted her weight and began to walk toward him. Her steps were unhurried, heel to toe, balanced. There was no hesitation in her movement, no glance to check angles that had already been cleared. She carried herself with the quiet certainty of someone who had done this before many times, under worse conditions, with real consequences. The swagger wasn't exaggerated. It was efficient, earned. Am I? The single question landed heavier than any accusation. Nathan's eyes tracked her unconsciously, shoulders drawing in as she closed the distance. He swallowed again. His Adam's apple jumped. Above them, the loudspeakers crackled to life. End exercise. Lights up. The transition was violent. The main floodlights slammed on, bleaching the room in stark white. Nathan squeezed his eyes shut on reflex, a sharp exhale bursting from his chest. When he opened them again, the kill house looked different, less threatening, more exposed. The illusion peeled away. The opposing operators reached up and removed their masks. The faces beneath were older, lined, calm. Master Chiefs, men who carried decades of operational weight in the set of their shoulders and the steadiness of their eyes. A few of them were smiling, not mockery, but recognition. One of them turned his head toward Alicia, the grin widening slightly. "Nice shooting, Commander," he said. "You haven't lost a step." The word hit Nathan late. "Commander." The blood drained from his face, his knees flexed, barely holding. He reached out instinctively, fingers brushing the wooden barrier as if to steady himself. His voice came out thin. "Commander?" The boots echoed on concrete as Donovan stepped onto the kill floor, clipboard tucked under one arm. His gaze went to Nathan first and stayed there. It wasn't anger that settled on his face. It was disappointment heavy, unmasked. "Ensign Cole," Donovan said, his tone clinical, final. "Meet Lieutenant Commander Alicia Sullivan, SEAL Team 6, Intelligence Support Activity, and currently the lead auditor for Naval Special Warfare Operational Protocols." Nathan's mouth opened, but nothing came out. His shoulders sagged, the tension that had held him upright finally bleeding away. Across from him, Alicia stood motionless, eyes steady, posture unchanged. She didn't look at him as a man who had failed. She looked at him as an officer who had been assessed. Nathan's gaze moved back and forth between Donovan and Alicia, slow and unfocused, like his eyes were trying to recalibrate after a concussion. The meaning assembled itself piece by piece, each one heavier than the last. His jaw tightened. A faint tremor ran through his hands before he forced them still against his thighs. The woman he had dismissed. The woman he had cornered in hallways. The woman he had soaked with scalding coffee and laughed at while others watched. She hadn't flinched then. She hadn't raised her voice. She had simply taken notes. The realization struck with the dull force of a body blow, emptying the air from his lungs. His shoulders dropped a fraction, as if gravity had suddenly increased. "You." His lips barely moved. "You're a SEAL?" Alicia's eyes never left his. There was no satisfaction in them, no heat, just a cold professional distance that made the words sharper. "I was operating in Afghanistan while you were still in middle school asking permission to use the bathroom," she said. She reached up and unclipped her helmet with a practiced motion, fingers moving without haste. When she lifted it free, her hair fell loose, dark and damp with sweat, clinging briefly to her temples before she shook it out. A few strands stuck to the side of her face. She didn't bother to brush them away. Her posture remained upright, shoulders back, chin level. She looked exactly like what she was, someone accustomed to carrying authority without announcing it. Nathan swallowed. His throat felt raw. His eyes flicked to the pistol as she holstered it, noting the smoothness of the movement too late to pretend he hadn't noticed. "I was embedded here to root out complacency," Alicia continued. She stepped closer. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just enough to erase the space between them. Nathan's instinctive reaction was to lean back, his spine brushing the plywood wall behind him. His breath shortened despite his effort to control it. "I was looking for security lapses," she said. "Instead, I found a toxic leadership problem." Her eyes narrowed by a millimeter. "You." Nathan turned his head toward Donovan, searching for something: intervention, mitigation, a sign this could still be reframed. Donovan didn't move. His expression was set, unreadable, the same face he wore when issuing orders that carried consequences no one could appeal. "You threw coffee on a superior officer, Cole," Donovan said. His voice was low, almost conversational, which made it worse. He shifted the clipboard against his forearm, paper rasping softly. "But that's not why you're in trouble. You're in trouble because when the bullets started flying, you treated your asset like baggage and hid in a corner. You're not a teammate. You're a liability." The words settled in the room like a verdict. Nathan's mouth opened. His shoulders hunched inward, his earlier bravado collapsing into something small and brittle. "Sir, I didn't know," he said, the plea escaping before he could stop it. "If I knew she was an operator, that's the point." Alicia cut him off. Her voice snapped across the kill house. clean and sharp, echoing off the bare walls. Nathan flinched despite himself. "You treat people with respect because it's the standard," she said, each word controlled, deliberate, "not because you think they can hurt you." She held his gaze, unblinking. "You failed the character test long before you failed the tactical one." Nathan's eyes dropped to the floor. His jaw worked once, then stilled. The red marks from simunition rounds were still visible on the walls around them, silent witnesses to a failure that had nothing to do with marksmanship. Alicia stepped back, reclaiming her space, her expression unchanged. Donovan made a note on his clipboard. The exercise was over. The assessment was not. The next morning, the mess hall no longer carried the loose noise of bravado and half-swallowed laughter. Conversations stayed low, contained. Chairs were pulled in carefully. Boots found the deck without dragging. Even the metal clatter of trays against the serving line seemed muted, as if the room itself had absorbed a lesson overnight. Alicia sat alone at a corner table, her back straight, shoulders squared. She wore her full-dress uniform. The fabric lay crisp against her frame, pressed to regulation sharpness. Gold sleeve stripes caught the overhead lights when she shifted her forearm. The trident on her chest rested exactly where it should, centered and unmoving, its dull gleam unmistakable to anyone who knew what it represented. In front of her sat a ceramic mug, steam curled upward in thin, steady strands. She lifted it with both hands, the motion economical, and took a measured sip. Her expression didn't change. Across from her, Mark Donovan set his own cup down carefully, aligning it with the edge of the table before speaking. "The paperwork is processed," he said. Alicia's eyes remained on the open file in front of her. Her thumb pressed lightly against the page to keep it flat. "Dishonorable?" she asked. Donovan shook his head once. "General discharge under honorable conditions. Failure to adapt." His jaw tightened briefly before relaxing again. "I did him a favor." Alicia turned a page. The paper made a soft, final sound. "He's out," Donovan continued, "effective immediately. He'll never wear the trident." She nodded once. No relief crossed her face. No satisfaction curled her mouth. What she felt stayed internal, contained, a system corrected, a fault line sealed before it widened. The base, the teams, the culture they depended on, those things mattered more than any single man's downfall. The double doors at the far end of the hall swung open. The sound cut clean through the room. Nathan Cole stepped inside, dressed in civilian clothes that still carried the stiffness of something unfamiliar. A duffel bag hung from his shoulder, the strap biting into his collarbone. 2 military police flanked him, their posture professional, neutral. They weren't rough. They didn't need to be. Every head in the mess hall turned. Forks paused midair. Cups hovered just short of mouths. No one spoke. The silence wasn't imposed. It was instinctive. Nathan took 2 steps forward before he saw her. He stopped, his grip tightened on the duffel strap, knuckles paling. His shoulders sagged a fraction, as if the weight he carried had finally settled where it belonged. His eyes found Alicia across the room, seated, composed, untouched by the attention focused on him. For the first time since she had met him, there was no arrogance in his expression. No entitlement. His jaw trembled once before he clamped it shut. His eyes shone, not with anger, but with the dull, hollow look of someone standing at the edge of a life already closed behind him. He opened his mouth. The words hesitated there, an apology, a defense, a plea. Whatever it was, it never made it out. Alicia did not look up. She lifted her mug, took another calm sip of coffee, then set it down in the same place it had been before. Her hand returned to the file. She turned the page, the movement smooth and deliberate, and leaned slightly toward Donovan as if the interruption had never occurred. To her, Nathan Cole was already administrative history. The MPs guided him forward again. The doors closed behind him with a soft, final click. The mess hall slowly resumed its rhythm, quieter than before, steadier. Alicia continued her review, her posture unchanged, the trident on her chest catching the light as she moved. Nathan was guided through the final set of doors without ceremony. The hinges groaned softly as they opened, and the California sun struck him full in the face the moment he stepped outside. Light bounced off the asphalt, sharp and unforgiving. He squinted, instinctively lifting a hand that no longer wore a uniform sleeve. The heat pressed down on him, unfamiliar in its indifference. No rank, no cover, no second chances. The duffel bag felt heavier now, its strap biting into his shoulder as the MPs released him at the curb. One of them spoke quietly, procedural, pointing toward the gate. Nathan nodded once, unable to summon anything else. His chest rose and fell too fast. The sound of the door closing behind him was dull, final. The base moved on without him. Inside, the mess hall remained steady. Alicia finished her coffee, draining the last inch of dark liquid before setting the mug down with care. She stood, smoothing the front of her uniform, aligning seams that were already straight. Her fingers paused briefly at the trident on her chest, not to adjust it, only to acknowledge its weight. Donovan watched her from his chair. "What's next, Commander?" he asked. "Back to Washington?" "Not yet," Alicia replied. Her voice carried no fatigue, only resolve. "The audit isn't complete. Cultures don't fail all at once. They crack quietly. I intend to find the rest." Donovan's mouth curved into a small, genuine smile. "Welcome to the team, Alicia." She inclined her head once. No handshake, no theatrics. As she walked out of the mess hall, the room subtly reoriented around her. Conversations softened. Postures corrected themselves without instruction. She passed the table where the incident had unfolded days earlier. The spilled coffee long cleaned, the surface polished back to regulation shine. A young recruit sat there now, shoulders tense, eyes flicking up as she approached. He saw the gold stripes, the insignia, and sprang to his feet, snapping a salute so sharp his elbow locked. "At ease," Alicia said. Her tone was firm, but not unkind. The recruit exhaled as he sat back down, color returning to his face. She didn't slow her stride. Outside, sunlight washed over the concrete walkways. Alicia stepped into it without hesitation. She crossed the lot toward her Jeep, boots striking the pavement in an even cadence. The bass felt different, no louder, no quieter, but aligned, as if a miscalibrated instrument had finally been corrected. She reached her vehicle and stopped. An envelope rested beneath the windshield wiper. Plain. No seal. No return address. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She slid it free and opened it with controlled pressure, careful not to tear the contents. Inside was a single photograph, grainy and slightly out of focus. It showed her seated in the mess hall weeks earlier, head bent over paperwork, hair tied back. Undercover. Unaware. Her eyes moved to the back. 3 words were scrawled there, uneven and unfamiliar. "We are watching." Alicia didn't react outwardly. She slipped the photo back into the envelope, folded it once, and tucked it into the inside pocket of her uniform. Her breathing slowed, measured. Whatever this was, it was not noise. It was Signo. She started the engine, the Jeep came to life beneath her hands. The mission, she knew, was not finished. If you appreciated this story and valued disciplined, grounded narratives like this one, consider subscribing to the channel for more.